I, 29F, have been with my husband Ryan, 33M, for 4 years, married for 2. And everything's always been great between us except for one thing: he never ever takes me with him on his annual family trips. That's literally ever been. It has been the only bone of contention between the two of us, and I have never been able to figure out why he would do such a thing. For the first year that we were dating, he told us that his family takes an annual vacation every year and they get away for a couple of days. I thought that it was a pretty cool tradition, given the fact that I don't come from a very healthy family myself. My parents are divorced and we never had the opportunity to do stuff like this. I was looking forward to doing things like this with the family after we got married. The second year of us being together, I expected him to ask me to accompany him because we had been together for quite some time. We were pretty serious and were even living together. But he did not ask me, and I found it a bit awkward, but after that, I did not think much and figured that maybe he was waiting for us to get married so we could go on these trips. But even last year, after we had been married for a couple of months, he did not ask me to accompany him. That was when I was pretty disappointed, and before he left, I decided to ask him why he hadn't invited me to come with them on the trip. He seemed very confused and told me that he had just assumed that I would not want to accompany them. I don't know why he would do such a thing, because I had repeatedly told him that I liked the idea of such family trips together and would have loved to be a part of one. He knew that I was a child of divorce and had a weird childhood, so I enjoyed doing things like this. It was not even as though I did not get along well with his family. His parents loved me and so did his older sister, her husband, and kids. So I got along well with everyone. I did not understand why he did not think I would want to come along with them. We had a discussion about it last year, and we got into a fight before he left for the trip because even after I had expressed my interest in being part of it, he had still not invited me to come along. I was feeling very insulted by that, so because of how upset I was, I decided to confront him and pick a fight about it because I thought that it was totally necessary for me to get to the bottom of it. So a couple of days before he was supposed to leave for the trip with his family, we fought, and I asked him why he had still not invited me to come along, even after I had expressed my interest in being a part of this. Because as my husband, he should have known that I wanted to go along with him and spend time with him and his family. And he finally told me that it was not just that he had assumed that I would not want to accompany him, there was also the fact that his family was not entirely comfortable with me accompanying them. I was really hurt by that because I had always assumed that I got along with them, as I had mentioned earlier, and there had been absolutely no signs of them being uncomfortable or uneasy around me. They always treated me like family whenever I visited them, so I did not see that coming in the slightest. He told me that he had given me another reason and sort of lied to me to spare my feelings, but the real truth was that his family still wasn't comfortable enough with me to take a trip together. They were fine with me visiting them on important events and the holidays and spending time with them at that point, and a trip was a big deal. They were not ready for that yet. They believed that if I accompanied them, they would have to be extra formal the entire time and it would just be really awkward, so they wanted to spend a few more years with me, get to know me better, and then they would extend an invitation to me. The only reason that my sister-in-law's husband got to be part of these trips was because they were high school sweethearts and my husband's family had known him for a really long time, so it was different for them. But with me, they were not ready yet, and as hard as it felt, I still had to accept it. If they were not comfortable with me, I couldn't force my presence on them. And it was not Ryan's fault, so I couldn't blame him for it, and I had to accept it. I was very confused about my feelings at the time, so I let him go without any further fuss about this. But when he was gone for that 1 week, I did some introspection and I decided that I was going to try and really make myself a part of the family, so that my in-laws feel comfortable enough to take me on a trip with them and they don't have to act formal and ultra polite around me. I tried to understand where they were coming from and made sure that in the next couple of months, I made them feel comfortable around me, and I went out of my way for that because I did not get along well with my own family. I wouldn't want to have a strained relationship with my in-laws as well. I guess you guys might have guessed that I'm a bit of a people pleaser by now. I really wanted my in-laws to like me, so after my husband told me that they did not feel comfortable enough with me yet, I started going out of my way to be nice to them. After they returned from the trip, I guess Ryan told them about the discussion that we had earlier, and we had a family discussion where they apologized for not inviting me and explained to me that because otherwise, Ryan and his sister were always busy and didn't really get to spend time with their family. Ryan is an investment banker, which is a taxing job, and his sister and her husband are in the medical field, so they're also pretty busy most of the time. They do get together with their parents every once in a while, but they have always had this tradition and they wanted to follow through on it. They did not realize that this would make me feel left out, and they apologized to me from the bottom of their hearts. They also said that they would try and meet me halfway, and try to make me feel more included and make me feel part of the family. It was a much needed discussion, and after that, I decided to try and get to know them independently as well, which is what I meant when I said I started going out of my way. Even if my husband wouldn't be visiting his parents, I would still try and make it a point to go see them every once in at least 2 weeks. And whenever I would visit them, we would have a nice time together. At least that's what I thought was happening. They seemed to be enjoying my company. I think anybody else in my place would have felt the same way because they put on false happy faces and it was really hard to decide whether they were acting or not. Anyway, I had assumed that they were having a nice time with me and they enjoyed my visits, so I kept doing it. I would not be there all the time, of course, but occasionally. They had said that they would try to meet me halfway and make me feel part of the family, so I had no reason to assume that they were getting annoyed by these visits. But apparently, that's the reason that they gave my husband this year, as they refused to invite me yet again. And that pretty much broke my heart because I had really tried to be a part of the family and be there for them as their daughter-in-law, and yet, all of that went in vain. This happened a couple of days ago, and when I found out about it, I was heartbroken because I had really felt that my in-laws and I were getting along well and I could expect to be a part of the family trip this year. Last week, Ryan told me that they had finally decided that the family was going to California this year, for the annual vacation. I was really excited because I thought that I was going to be part of that trip this year, but then, he went on talking about it and mentioned nothing about me. So when I asked him if I would be part of the trip this year or not, he seemed kind of upset and said that his parents hadn't mentioned anything about it, but I knew that he was lying, so after some convincing, he finally told me that his parents had said that they were kind of done with me apparently, as I had been visiting them a little too frequently and they needed some space. They believed that I had been trying way too hard and was kind of forcing my presence on them, even when they had made it very clear that they needed some space. I did not know what they were talking about because they had not made anything clear, and every time that I visited them or spoke to them, they seemed to have been enjoying it. I told Ryan about it, and he told me that he had tried to convince his parents, but they were pretty stubborn about this and said that I was not welcome this year. I was very upset and I got into a huge fight with Ryan because I wanted him not to go on the trip as well if I couldn't go because I thought that his parents were being very unfair to me. Earlier, they had told me that they would try to include me in things and get to know me, which is why I had tried so hard to build a relationship with them. And now, they were acting as if I was the one who was bothering them. I found that very insulting and I tried to tell Ryan that this was not the way to behave with me and I did not appreciate the way his parents were acting. But he told me that this annual trip was very important to him, so that he could spend time with his family and would have loved to take me with him, but his parents did not want that. He couldn't argue with them. And he said that, apparently, he could see both sides, which was ridiculous because I don't think that his parents have a point here and I think that they are just being fickle-minded and are making me seem like the bad guy just for trying to get along with them. If they did not want me coming along with them, they should have just said that instead of coming up with arbitrary reasons. Anyway, we got into a big fight and I told him that I would not like him to go on the trip and I wanted him to take a stand for me, but he said that I was being silly and petty and went on the trip anyway. After he left on the trip, I was very disappointed by the way that I was being treated in this family. Because I had really always tried my best to be there for everybody and become a part of this family. My own parents have never been very connected with me, and when I met my in-laws, I thought that maybe these people would like me better. Even now, my parents and I don't really talk much. But the relationship that Ryan had with his family, I envied that and I wanted to be a part of that. So I don't think it was wrong for me to try and get them to like me. I might have gone a bit overboard in trying to do that, but that was only because they themselves had said that they would try to make me feel like I was more of a part of the family. And I had also noticed the difference in the way that my sister-in-law's husband and I were treated. I just wanted to be loved by these people. I don't think I was wrong for trying that. These were the thoughts that kept running in my head on repeat and I just kept feeling bad for myself because at that point, I felt like Ryan did not care about me either, and I could still forgive his family for treating me badly, but I could not forgive him. And I had half a mind to leave before he came back from his. 2 days after he had left, he called me up and I was pretty surprised. When he called me, I did not answer the phone the first time because I was very pissed with him. But then, he texted me and told me that it was an emergency and it was necessary for me to answer. So after that, he FaceTimed me, and to my surprise, his entire family was with him. His parents, his sister, and his brother-in-law, everybody were standing behind him, and all of them looked really nervous to talk to me. I did not understand what was going on, and when I asked him to talk to me, he told me that everybody was there to apologize to me. So that was a pleasant surprise. He also told me that he had spoken to his parents about the things that I had said, and the fact that he had. So now the two of them had realized that they had been wrong and wanted to fly down to them and be there with them for the rest of the trip. His parents spoke to me as well and told me that Ryan had spoken to them, and they had realized that the way that I was being treated was quite unfair, and they were ashamed of the way that they acted because they had been entirely selfish and hadn't even given a thought to how I would be feeling about all of this. They made the apologies seem so heartfelt. My mother-in-law even shed a tear or two and told me that Ryan had told them that I had only been trying to get them to me and they had been very selfish and inconsiderate, and they wanted to make it up to me by inviting me along for the rest of the trip, and they would be heartbroken if I did not accept that invitation. They would understand if I declined, but they really wanted me to be a part of it. On the call, I was pretty confused, because I had felt insulted earlier, but on the other hand, I believe in second chances and I really loved Ryan. I wanted to make it work with him, so I told him that I would think about it. In the evening, I told him that I was ready to join them. I thought about it and I believe that everybody deserves a second chance, so I got my flight tickets and flew down to them. They were there to receive me at the airport and we drove to an Airbnb, which was very confusing for me because I had assumed that they would be staying in since all of us were pretty rich. but the place that they were living in, it was far removed from the hustle of the city, and the area was pretty secluded, so they told me that there were no hotels that had empty rooms nearby, and the ones that were around, they were not good enough, so they had to go with an Airbnb. It was close to the beach, but quite far away from everything else, and was in a pretty nice spot, if you really think about it. Unfortunately, the only downside was that they had to do everything for themselves. And I don't think anybody in my husband's family is used to doing that, not even Ryan. I'm used to being independent because whenever I was younger, my parents were not really home most of the time, so I would end up having to do everything for myself, right from the cooking to my own laundry. And even as I grew up, I made it a habit. So while we do have a housekeeper now, I still prefer doing certain things on my own. Ryan, however, grew up in a house where they constantly had people for everything they wanted to have done. And the Airbnb did not have any housekeeping services or any room service, so they had to cook and clean up after themselves. Even though the trip was just for 8 days, they did not like the idea of that, and once I was there, they started delegating all those jobs to me, but they were doing it in a really subtle way so that I wouldn't guess what they were up to. Unfortunately, for them, I'm not stupid. I might be a people pleaser, but I'm not going to just forget about my respect and dignity and be their unpaid nanny and cook. As soon as they got there, they complained about how there was nobody to do anything for them. All the hotels were booked as well, so they couldn't even move. And they were really annoyed with this whole thing, because apparently everybody was too tired, and they were supposed to be on holiday, so it was not fair that they had to do everything for themselves. I could understand what they were trying to hint at, and then, they started trying to delegate all the work to me. Pretended like they were going to help me out as well, but said that since I was apparently the best at all of this, they were looking forward to having me around. And then they made the mistake of saying that the next morning, they would be leaving for a bit of sightseeing and requested that I stay with my sister-in-law's kids. That's when I lost it because I had realized what was going on. It was pretty late at night, and they had already told me that there were no hotels nearby that were not completely booked, but I still told them that if this was the real reason that they had invited me to join them on the trip, then I was better off staying at home. They tried to calm me down and said that they did not intend to insult me, but I could understand what was going on, and that they only wanted me around as a free nanny and cook. And I was not going to tolerate that, so I told them that I would either be here as part of the family or I would leave. So after that, they were forced to admit that they had initially only invited me with the intention of having someone extra so that at least my sister-in-law's children would have somebody to be with them since their nanny had fallen and could not join them on the trip. It was apparently my mother-in-law's idea, which was a unique brand of disrespect. I was very upset when I found out the real reason they had invited me, and it completely negated their apology, but my in-laws insisted that they had meant every word of what they had said. They told me that they would be devastated if I left, because they really wanted me to be there with them for the rest of the vacation as well, and it did not even matter if I did not want to help them out with chores, and as a way to make it up to me, they would do it themselves, and I could just unwind and relax. So after a bit of apologizing and pleading from their end, I decided to stay, as long as they did not ask me to do anything. That way, I would get a free vacation out of this, and I already made up my mind that I was going to get back at them. They had even assumed that I would tolerate this level of disrespect, and I had a plan for when we would be coming back home. I spent the rest of the vacation doing nothing. They did all the work around the house, because they had to compensate for the way that they had behaved with me. And I just chilled in my room, taking my revenge. Yesterday was the day that we were supposed to all go back home, and by the time we were at the airport, I could sense that everybody was really annoyed with me. Because I had really lived up to what I had said, that I would not be doing any work, and I guess somewhere deep down, they were pissed at me. They were trying to put on an act of being nice to me and stuff, but I could see through it very clearly. However, it did not matter because I already had a plan in mind that would show them that it was never a good idea to pick a fight with me. Once we had boarded the flight yesterday, I only had to wait for a couple of minutes, and then, my plan was finally put into action when 2 of my friends boarded the flight with us as well. Obviously, they had been with us all along, throughout the entire process, but my in-laws only realized what was going on after I greeted 2 of them. And then, I sat away from my family, because I had booked my flight tickets separately. For the last couple of days, ever since I had flown down here, and they had disrespected me by assuming that I would become their servant for the vacation and they would easily take advantage of my kindness, I had talked to my friends about it. They had been just as outraged, and we had decided that we would go back home together, and from there, we would embark on a road trip. I was just 1 row behind my in-laws, and when they noticed that I was sitting separately with my friends, they asked me what was going on, and I told Ryan what I had been approved for the past couple of days. The day after they had insulted me, I had spoken to my friends, and we had planned this whole thing out. One of my friends lived in California anyway, so it was no trouble for her, and the other one had to fly down to California, but it was all worth it. The reason I had them fly down here, and take me back home, is because I didn't even want to spend the flight back home with these people. I could have just had them fly directly to my hometown, but we planned this out on purpose because I wanted to show them their place. I had just been trying to be kind to them, but since they had shown me their true colors, it was about time that they saw mine. Once I had explained everything to Ryan, He told me that it was very petty of me to do this and that he was not fine with me just leaving for a cross-country road trip with my friends as soon as we got back home because that would be inconvenient for him, but I told him that it did not matter to me. I also told him that I was going to leave him now that he had shown me that he did not have a spine and could never stand up to his parents for my sake. This was another reason that I had invited my friends to be there for me on the flight back home so that I would have more support when I confronted him and told him what I was going to do once we got back home. I had already spoken to my lawyer, and he was in the process of preparing the divorce papers. As soon as I returned from the road trip, I was going to file for divorce. I was not even going to go back home with him because it just did not seem worth it after everything that happened. He had allowed his parents to disrespect me, time and again, and this time, they had taken things too far. And my friends also took my side. They told him that I had made up my mind and there was no turning back. Besides, now that the two of them were here, there was no way that he could even manipulate me into believing that there was any need for me to give them another chance. Everybody was pretty upset on the flight back home, and after I had told him that I was leaving him, we did not speak for the entire duration of the flight, and I was pretty happy about it. I was sitting right behind him, but I didn't even care about that. I was just so happy to be around my friends once again. For context, these two women had been with me since middle school, but we had been separated after college, and even after that, we had tried to keep in touch, but Ryan did not approve of my friendship with them, and he had made me distance myself from them after we got into a relationship. And I, being the vulnerable fool that I am, did exactly what he asked me to. His reasons were pretty stupid too. He just believed that these two women were a little too manipulative, and he thought that I had become a doormat for the two of them, and I believed him. I just wanted to be with him, so I made him my priority and forgot about everything else. But now that I had realized that he was completely spineless, I had told my friends about it and they were standing up for me. After we landed, we went our separate ways. I didn't even go back home to pack for the road trip. I decided that I was just going to buy new clothes on the way, but I was not going to be anywhere near Ryan or his family. That was yesterday, and after we landed, they did not speak to me. In fact, they had stopped acknowledging my existence, right after I had boarded the flight with my friends and told him that I was leaving him. But this morning, he sent me a long text, saying that he was really disappointed with the way that I was acting. He told me that he acknowledged and was ready to accept the fact that his parents were being horrible to me and that it had been wrong of him not to stand up for me, but apparently, he wanted me to think about this from his perspective as well, and that these were his parents, he couldn't just disrespect them. And apparently, he hadn't even realized what his mother was trying to do, since she had only spoken about the reason why she wanted me to come along on the trip to my sister-in-law, not him. He had no idea that they intended to make me cook, clean, and babysit for them, so it was unfair of me to blame him for that. He said that he was feeling really guilty about everything and he just wanted to make things right with me, so he would want me to go on this road trip and come back to him. And apparently, if I did not do that, it just meant that I never loved him in the first place, and now I'm just really confused. It feels like he's manipulating me and I know that, but even then, there's a part of me that believes that I should just at least talk it out with him because I never really gave him a chance to explain because he couldn't exactly speak to me on the flight back home because we did not want to create a scene and trouble the other passengers. Anyway, I spoke to my friends about it, and they are vehemently against the idea of speaking to him. They just want me to block him and move on. I know that they are right, but I just want a second opinion, I guess, just to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. Ida for leaving my husband because he did not stand up to his parents for me? Update 1. First off, thank you so much for all the comments, even the mean ones. I guess I really needed a reality check that Ryan was always going to be the kind of guy who tried to manipulate me, and he had been a bright red flag ride from the beginning, but I was wearing rose-colored glasses, so I did not realize that. Anyway, now that my friends and you guys have helped me realize it, I'm not going back. I have blocked him and I'm going on this road trip with my friends, to reconnect with them and regain the friendship that I had lost earlier, because of Ryan. Update 2. Quick update. I spoke to my lawyer and he told me that the divorce papers are ready, and I can file the petition as soon as I am back from the road trip. Which is lucky, because I'm going back home in a couple of days, and as soon as I return, I'm going to file for a divorce. I have not heard from anybody from my in-laws' family or Ryan. He did not try to get in touch with me, and I'm happy about that because I don't think I want to speak to him at this point. The road trip has been fun though. My friends and I have been reminiscing about the old times, the good times. And gosh, I can't believe I left this behind for Ryan. Update 3. Hi. So it's been about 2 months since I returned from my road trip. The divorce proceedings started quite a while back and we are in the middle of settlement negotiations right now. They are going quite smoothly since Ryan's family was able to brainwash him into believing that I was the bad guy here and he did not need me back. And I'm glad they did so because that just made the divorce process a lot easier for me now. He does not want anything from me and is acting like I'm the villain here, and he's too good for me anyway. Good for him, he deserves way better, and so do I.